So thank you so much, Loughlin. I hope I pronounced your name right, for introducing myself and also the topic of my talk today. Um, so yeah, my name is Phoebe, and I am an assistant professor from the Institute for the Study of University Pedagogy from University of Toronto, Mississauga. And I'm super pleased to participate in this educational research conference today. And I'm really actually happy that Emma primed the topic of internationalization in higher education from the global and very big picture way. So my topic is really zoning into the kind of national level. So I will be talking about two, national strategies and internationalization, institutional strategies. And then I'm hoping to cover the, agenda here. And before I start my talk, I would like to acknowledge my co-contributor of this study, Zahra Zafarova. She's a PhD student from Ontario Institute for Studies in Education from University of Toronto. So let me start. So let me tell you a little bit about the background and literature on this topic. So higher education, is seen as a capital for states, and individuals get skills and knowledge to embrace the demands, and the states can arrive at informed decisions. And Trilla Kicker, she's a Canadian scholar Emma actually works quite closely with. Internationalization became connected to diplomatic relations and method of engaging in knowledge economy. And interestingly enough, international students account for 25% of all enrollments in UK and 21% in Canada, according to 2019 data. This number may have changed, may have gone up, I'm not really sure at this time. I think they definitely after the pandemic, the number at least in Canada is increasing again. So internationalization is one of top priorities for institutions right now. So the purpose for this study was to conduct a comparative analysis, institutional responses to the governmental international education strategies in Canada and the United Kingdom. The two research questions we were hoping to answer were, what are the priorities of the national level international education strategies in Canada and the UK? And how do higher education institutions respond to the higher level of international education strategies in Canada and the UK? So what we did was a qualitative document analysis, from the two sets of documents from the governmental and international education policies and institutional level of internationalization strategies. So we were hoping to see that we identify the keywords as the priorities of the national international education strategies from both countries. And some of the keywords we used were international students, revenue generation, geographic priorities, targets, and inbound and outbound mobility, and national development and global role. So subsequently, the institutional internationalization strategies were analyzed from the selected 16 university, meaning basically 8 from Canada, 8 from the UK. And finally, the themes emerged from the policy documents and internationalization strategies have been compared. So these are the documents we examined. So from Canada, from the national strategy, Building on Success International Education Strategy 2019 to 2024, we looked at 8 different universities in Canada. These universities actually go across West Coast to East Coast, kind of covers entire nation. So we were being mindful of the geographical representation. And same with the UK, we picked 2 documents on national strategies, in this case, International Education Strategy, Global Potential, Global Growth, and International Education Strategy 2021, Update Supporting Recovery and Driving Growth. So you may notice that actually the Canadian one covered a period between 2019 and 2024. So this plan was released prior to the pandemic. So, unlike UK one, they released the updated version in 2021. So they were able to really tackle on some of the kind of emerged, issues, during the pandemic and also post-Brexit as well. So we picked eight university strategies. Also try to pick a kind of representation from geographical areas covering kind of entire UK rather than certain parts of UK. So let's get to the theoretical framework. So we use a loosely coupled system and tightly coupled system, from WIKE, because we wanted to see the relationship and also the coordination or types of, connection or disconnect, coming from the national to institutional level of, plans and strategies. So what we were able to do in terms of national comparison was, so Canada, in terms of Canada, who made the international strategy from the federal government's level? So Ministry of International Trade Diversification, Ministry of Employment, Workforce, Development and Labor, Ministry of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and Global Affairs Canada. So you may have noticed that, there's no Ministry of Education involved. This is an interesting context that I should probably give you a bit of a context here. So in Canada, education is a provincial matter. So the federal government basically has no say in education. So you'll notice that that's partly why the national strategy is focusing on immigration, national economy, etc. Later on, we're going to be talking about the thematic areas. So this is partly why it's different from the UK strategy that was actually made from Department of Education and Department for International Trade, because UK has a national Ministry of Education. So the document we looked at was a bit more centralized. So some of the focuses that we identified from the Canadian document was continuation of the economic and trade rationales for international education, diversification of student body, promoting global ties, and fostering a vibrant Canadian economy. Again, economy, right? They keep, emerging. So the next one, the UK, this is an interesting one. As I mentioned earlier, this was a updated version of a previous international education document. So they were able to kind of address some of the kind of concerns and issues around COVID-19 and also Brexit. And same as Canada, they were concerned about diversification of student body, building lasting global partnerships, and enhancing the international student experience. So just to talk a little more about specifics of Canadian governmental policies, increase outbound student mobility and employment and social development Canada, and promotion of Canadian experience class, meaning that this is one of those immigration policies that they're trying to bring in more international students who have a pathway to become permanent residents, in Canada. This was proposed by Immigration, Refugees, and Canadian Citizenship. Scholarships for international students was proposed by Global Affairs. Probably still not good enough, but at least it was there. And specifics of the British governmental policies, talked about multidimensionality of international education, emphasis on international branch campuses and the Department of Education, financial and academic options for international students, universities, UK International, employment of international students, so the UK Council for International Student Affairs, and the Confederation of British Industry. So definitely a lot of emphasis on international students' experience in both countries. An economic rationale in national policies. So UK document states education exports make an important contribution to the UK economy, as well as building global relationships. And DFATD, this is Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, so its previous name, of Global Affairs Canada. So international students in Canada provide immediate and significant economic benefits to Canadians in every region of the country. To look at institutional strategies about economic rationale, Here are two quotes from Queen's University in Canada and Manchester Metropolitan University from the UK. So Queen's will measure the proportion of incoming international fee-paying undergraduate students admitted to the university. Our goal is to increase the proportion of incoming international fee-paying undergraduate students to 10% of the total incoming undergraduate population. So heavy emphasis on, fee-paying and then a number and all this. And a fee structure including discounts, scholarships that is aligned with our competitors, attractive to students, and encourages progression from undergraduate to postgraduate study with Manchester Metropolitan. Again, there is an emphasis on fees. It's partly because the revenue related. So national development as priority was also observed from both countries. So there is an increasing acknowledgement from the government of the importance of universities to economic growth through the delivery of innovation skills and international trade from the UK, and provincially and nationally international education strategies recently have been produced as international activities recognized as a key driver to growth at home from Simon Fraser University in British Columbia in Canada. So we observe that there is loose coupling between governmental and institutional documents in terms of internationalization for global reputation. So both Canada and UK have a priority to maintain their competitiveness in the global economy. For example, in Canadian strategies, prioritize bringing in more competitive international students as immigrants, or by strengthening outbound mobility of Canadian students to stay competitive in the global place. But institutional level, there are other factors such as research and innovation, along with more international student enrollments to boost their global ranking. So governmental priorities are more national focused, while institutions are a little more interested in global ranking. So there's a bit of a disconnect. International students as a priority for internationalization. So Emma showed us a lot of the quantitative data globally and specifically about Republic of Korea. In case of Canada and UK, so international student enrollments or recruitments are definitely the main priority of all institutional strategies, as well as the national strategies. So they mainly talk about targeting complex activities related to the recruitment of international students. They often discuss the targets in numbers and ratios and recruitment of the best students, So from the Cardiff University, UK, states we will seek to recruit the best talent worldwide and recognize and celebrate their contributions to our institution. We aim for at least 25% of all overall student body to come from domiciles outside the UK and grow our international academic staff ratio to 30%. So lots of numbers and, great aspirations. So diversification of international student markets, that was kind of common priority from both national level and institutional level from both Canada and the UK context. So there was definitely tight coupling happening in a diversification principle. So Memorial University is the very far east, it's located in the very far east Canada. And that university strategy states that for long-term sustainability, Memorial should be focusing on diversifying its cohort of international students and planning recruitment activities with a view to reaching out to compatible markets worldwide, largely in keeping with Canada's international education strategy. So they actually mentioned the federal government strategy here. And we will seek to recruit from a diverse set of countries, so develop new markets and increase recruitment of students already based in the UK. It is not only to avoid overexposure to particular markets, but to ensure a diverse student body without overrepresentation of particular nationalities from University of Bradford from UK. So both countries, India and China are top two markets, for international students. So there is definitely a desire to diversifying the sources of the students. So specifically to Canada, outbound student mobility was mentioned, targeting for domestic disadvantaged students. So there was tight coupling in student mobility, but loose coupling in staff and faculty mobility here. So Queens will foster student participation in opportunities for international exchange, study abroad, experiential learning, internship placement, and volunteering, but not a lot of mentions on staff and faculty mobility in institutional level of documents in Canada. So some of the major findings, the kind of commonalities between the two countries. So both Canada and UK view international education as a growth opportunity for the economy. We saw lots of, strategies document talking about economy, economic growth, things like that. And then both Canada and UK view international students as a revenue source. It was very clear. We saw the fee paying, and that there was a target number and things like that, and as well as a potential workforce in their societies. And both Canadian and British institutional international strategies regard international students as a source of diversity in the campus. So they recognize that, they may not be there yet, but that's definitely their goal to move forward with the, diversification of the international students on campus and into the societies. And both Canadian, British, national, and institutional strategies see diversification of international students. I just talked about this as a top priority. In both Canada and the UK, nationally, around 50% of the international students come from two countries, in India and China. I'm not sure if that is the case in Korea, but that is the case in UK and Canada right now. And a little bit different from, like some sort of, kind of differentiated, finding between Canada and UK here. In Canadian national and institutional strategies, there is a high emphasis on outbound mobility of Canadian disadvantaged domestic students. In the UK, a touring scheme outbound mobility program is introduced to replace Erasmus Plus, which ended in 2020. And in UK national strategy, national level of support programs are being planned and implemented to support international students' application and their employability. So one thing that I noticed that from UK national strategy, actually, UK national strategy was actually much more robust, and it actually had much more detailed plans about the timeline, who's doing what, where is the money coming from. All of those things were, recorded in the strategy document, while Canadian document was kind of, not as detailed as the UK one. It's partly probably because of there's so many actors and so many ministries involved in that strategy document. Institutional internationalization strategies generally respond to the national strategic priorities. However, depending on the unique university context, the priorities are determined differently. So I wanted to share some of the current, news headlines, to discuss some of the implications of, the strategies document and post-pandemic, what are the implications here? So from Canadian context, CBC just released a news article about Canada overtakes UK as destination for Hong Kong students amid mounting exodus. So, you would think that with heavy influence from British, British influence, and you would think that Hong Kong students would choose to go to UK, but apparently Canada is their top destination right now. That's partly because of the, not only, students here get the postgraduate work permit, and they also have pathway programs to be able to become permanent residents a little bit easier. So there's definitely a really close connection between the education, international education strategies and immigration strategies here. And the second headline here, after years of advocacy, international students work limit temporarily lifted. So in the past, international students in Canada had very limited hours. They could work on campus and off campus. But with the, impact of pandemic, there is a shortage of labor. So federal government, it says temporarily, so we'll have to see. But right now they have lifted some of the limits. So students are able to work 20 hours off campus. So this means actually international students need 1, financial aid, 2, a work experience in Canada. So definitely there are other parts, to this policy that we should be able to think about, to really support international students' success. So in terms of UK is experiencing something interesting right now. UK national strategies, indicate that they want more students, they want more international students. But then recently, UK government has sort of announced, cap on foreign student numbers, because it could be partly that the current government being conservative, not so flexible with the immigration. So their concern was, these international students bring too many dependents, to the country. So we're gonna have to see, but definitely there were concerns from so-called non-elite universities and how this could be a huge financial constraints. And funny enough, I just talked about, how the government is limiting, the foreign student numbers, but then UK government also is doing, kind of easing into how students can get work visas, especially the ones who are, already, studying inside of, inside of UK, in UK universities. And I am fairly certain they're also opening up to foreign students coming from top 50 ranked universities in the world to be able to get a work visa easier. So they definitely are seeking elite and best students to the country. So I wanted to just mention that, there has to be better coordination, in terms of different policy levels to be able to support international students. So they're not just revenue sources. So actually they are supported and their success is, is possible, in the destination country. So I guess I'll end here. I will save the questions and comments maybe for later, but I'm not sure if we have time. So thank you very much for listening. And yeah, here's my email if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. As it happens, we do have some time for questions, which is fantastic. I just wanted to point out, it's very interesting that the contemporary kind of plight of Hong Kong students mirrors very closely the experience of Hong Kongers in 1997. Who found they couldn't go to the UK, right? And instead went to Canada, many of them.
Yes.
Emma got right in with a question in the chat. UK emphasizes international branch campuses and other forms of international education exports, but Canada does not. What might explain this difference?
I think, the national level of, strategy may not talk about it, but it is certainly happening in Canada too. I think it is actually happening a lot more with the college level, not in the university sectors. So there are lots of, as far as I know, there are lots of branch campuses coming from Ontario colleges, and several in the Middle Eastern countries. I am aware of a few already. So yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe it could be British Council has a role in actually supporting some of these overseas branch campuses, while Canada does not have a body like that could support branch campuses from a national kind of level. So that's just my speculation at this time, but I do know that in college sectors have a lot of branch campuses right now, but not so much with the university.